Okay, so you've done the groundwork. Maybe you found that perfect place in Thailand. Could be a gorgeous beachfront condo in Bangtao, Phuket, perhaps, or maybe something quieter over in Koh Samui. You think you've got the price sorted. But what about the actual cost? The one that isn't just in the nice glossy brochure. Well, today on the deep dive, we're really going to unpack those, let's say, crucial and often kind of overlooked property taxes in Thailand. And we'll focus specifically on stamp duty.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we're leaning heavily on a really comprehensive guide from Ocean Worldwide. Now, these guys are a luxury real estate agency. They've been right there in Phuket since way back in 2004. They really specialize in the high-end stuff, across Phuket and Koh Samui. Their director, Sandra O'Neill, she's personally helped literally thousands of families and investors figure all this out. So our goal today, cut through the noise, give you the clear facts, help you make informed decisions, basically. No nasty surprises later on.
That's exactly it. I mean, for anyone even thinking about property in Thailand, getting your head around these financial aspects beforehand, it isn't just about, budgeting. It's really about making smart choices, protecting your investment, being well informed. Well, that just gives you power, doesn't it? We want to make sure you walk into any deal with your eyes wide open.
Okay, let's unpack this then. When you're looking at property in Thailand, that sticker price for your dream villa, that's really not the whole picture. What the guide from Ocean Worldwide makes super clear is that your total property cost is more like, well, a layered cake of different fees. Beyond what you agree to pay the seller, you've got transfer fees, you've got stamp duty, withholding tax, and also something called specific business tax or SBT. And missing any one of those, that can really hit your budget unexpectedly.
And what often gets missed, I think, is knowing exactly who pays what. That's super important because the responsibility for each cost, well, it can really vary. Let's just quickly define these key charges you'll likely bump into. First, the transfer fee. It's typically 2% of the property's appraised value. Now, this is often split, but, quite frequently the buyer ends up covering it. Then you have stamp duty. That's a 0.5% tax. And importantly, it's on the higher figure, either the sale price or the government's appraised value. This one usually falls to the seller, and this is a big but, only if that specific business tax isn't applicable. We'll get more into that. Then withholding tax. This one's quite variable. It really depends on whether the seller is an individual or a company, and crucially, how long they've actually owned the property. And finally, specific business tax, the SBT. That's a hefty 3.3%. It generally applies if the property is sold within 5 years of buying it. Or it applies if the seller is a company. Doesn't matter how long they've owned it then.
Right, so let's paint a picture. Imagine you're looking at, say, a really nice luxury villa in Lay Phuket. Maybe it's priced around, THB 122 million. Understanding these extra costs isn't just like a good idea. It's absolutely essential for proper budgeting. You need that clarity before you even think about signing anything. It's really the difference between things going smoothly and, well, a potential financial mess.
Yeah, exactly. And what's quite interesting here is how stamp duty kind of acts as a fallback tax, you could say. It basically steps in when that other tax, the specific business tax or SBT, doesn't apply. So when does this more 0.5% stamp duty actually come into play? Well, it kicks in if the property's been owned for more than 5 years, or if the seller is an individual and it's their main home, their primary residence, and they've lived there for at least 1 year. The key thing to remember is you generally pay one or the other, stamp duty or SDT, never both on the same sale.
Okay, let's dig into that 0.5% calculation because it's maybe not as simple as it first sounds. Like you said, it's charged on the higher of two values, the actual sale price or the government's official assessed value, the cadastral value. So say you sell a place for 10 million baht, but the government values it at 12 million baht. Well, that 0.5% stamp duty, it's calculated on the 12 million.
That's right.
And the other round.
Yeah.
If you sell for 11 million, but the official value is only 9 million.
Then it's 0.5% on the 11 million. The higher figure always dictates the tax base. It ensures the government gets its share based on the, let's say, most favorable valuation for them.
Got it.
Now, this brings up a really important point. While we say stamp duty is typically the seller's responsibility, it's actually quite negotiable. This isn't completely fixed in stone. Like a lot of things in Thai property deals can be discussed. Which is precisely why checking your contract, your sale and purchase agreement is so crucial. The Ocean Worldwide Guide points this out clearly. While yes, the seller usually pays, through negotiation, it can be split. Or sometimes the buyer agrees to pay it all. At the end of the day, what's written in that signed contract? That's what dictates who pays. You know, I've seen people show up at the land department thinking everything's sorted, only to find out that negotiable stamp duty landed right on their lap because they didn't scrutinize the fine print.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's a detail that directly hits your wallet, especially
Yeah.
when you're talking about high-value luxury properties like maybe a nice villa in Koh Samui. You need to be sure.
Okay, so just to hammer this home, stamp duty and SPT, they are mutually exclusive, right?
Yeah.
It's one or the other, not both. That distinction seems absolutely fundamental.
Absolutely fundamental. Correct. So, the specific business tax, the SBT, that's the one that usually applies when a property changes hands pretty quickly, sold within 5 years of being bought. It also applies if the seller is registered as a company. In that case, the 5-year rule doesn't matter. The company pays SBT regardless of how long they owned it. And the rate for SBT is 3.3%. That actually includes a small local tax component as well. So using that 10 million baht example again, if SBT applies, that's 330,000 baht in tax. It's a pretty significant chunk, especially if you were planning a quick flip.
Right, 3.3% is quite a bit more than 0.5%.
Yeah.
So how do you avoid that higher SBT rate? What are the main ways?
Well, the guide from Ocean Worldwide lays it out clearly. The main ways are, 1, simply owning the property for more than 5 years, or 2, if you're selling as an individual, you need to have used it as your primary residence, your main home, and have your name in the house registration book, the Tabian Ban, for at least 1 year.
Okay.
If either of those conditions applies, then you typically sidestep the SBT and fall back to the stamp duty instead.
And this is where it gets really interesting financially, isn't it? Because the difference between paying 0.5% and 3.3%, well, that can easily mean saving hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of baht, especially if you're selling, say, a luxury villa somewhere like Phuket.
Absolutely. A huge difference. So just to quickly recap the typical setup for who pays what. Transfer fee, usually the buyer pays this, roughly 2%. Stamp duty, that's the seller, 0.5%, but only if SBT doesn't apply. SBT, again, the seller pays this, 3.3% if they've owned it less than 5 years or if they're a company. And withholding tax, also the seller, but the rate varies quite a bit depending on their situation and how long they've held the property, understanding that basic matrix.
Yeah, it's vital for planning your finances accurately when dealing with Thai property.
Okay, that clarifies the sales situation brilliantly. We see how critical that 0.5% versus 3.3% difference is for sellers. But what if you're not buying or selling freehold? What about, say, long-term leases? Does stamp duty factor in there too? Yes, it does, absolutely. Lease agreements, specifically when you're transferring the leasehold rights, also trigger a stamp duty requirement. The rate here is much lower, though. It sits at just 0.1%, but it's calculated on the total rent payable over the entire duration of the lease.
The whole lease term.
The whole term, yes. So, for example, if your lease agreement specifies a total rent payment of 5 million baht over its full life, the stamp duty would be only 5,000 baht. That's 5 million times 0.0001. Or let's take a longer one. Say a 30-year lease common for condos, and the total rent calculated over those 30 years amounts to THB 6,000. Then the stamp duty would be THB 6,000. It's paid up front, right when the lease is officially registered at the land department.
Okay, 0.1% is definitely less painful than the sale taxes. And who pays this lease stamp duty? Is it the owner or the tenant?
Well, similar to property sales, the responsibility here is often shared. Typically, it's split between the lessor, that's the property owner granting the lease, and the lessee, the tenant taking it on. But, and here we go again, it's crucial to check the actual lease agreement. The contract is king.
Always check the contract. Got it.
Yeah. As the guide mentions, it's often handled similarly to how other initial costs, like the lease registration fee itself, are split. Getting clarity in the contract just avoids any arguments or surprises later.
Makes sense. Now, are there any situations where you might be exempt from stamp duty or any special cases we should know about?
Yes, the guide does touch on a few important exemptions and, let's say, special circumstances. For instance, if you inherited properties, there can be potential relief from stamp duty. But this often needs professional confirmation to make sure you meet the specific criteria. The rules can be quite detailed. Also, for your primary residence, there might be reductions or even full exemptions possible, usually if the combined value of the land and the building falls below a certain government threshold. It's a nice benefit for homeowners, but generally only applies to your main registered home. And while ownership duration is mostly relevant for deciding between SBT and stamp duty, or for capital gains tax, keep in mind that for leases, the duration directly impacts the total rent calculation and therefore the amount of stamp duty owed. You know, if you're looking at a complex deal, maybe an oceanfront hotel lease in Kamal or something, every single detail, like lease length, significantly impacts the final figures.
Right. Those details matter.
Yeah.
Okay, now for perhaps the scariest part. What happens if you get this wrong? What are the consequences of not paying or paying late? This feels like a critical point, maybe the aha moment for listeners. It's easy to maybe brush these off as small details, but it sounds like the Thai Revenue Department doesn't really see it that way.
No, they absolutely do not. They take compliance very seriously. The guide lays out the penalties pretty starkly. First off, there's a late payment penalty. If you pay after the deadline, but before they take official action against you, it's a flat 20% penalty on the amount you owe.
20%. Wow.
Yeah, just for being late. And then on top of that, they add surcharges. This is 1% per month, or even part of a month that the payment is overdue. You can see how quickly a relatively manageable tax bill could, balloon into something much larger if you let it slide.
Definitely adds up fast.
It really does. And beyond just the money, persistent noncompliance can lead to more serious legal repercussions. Things like having difficulties with future property dealings in Thailand or just generally attracting unwanted scrutiny from the tax authorities. Connecting this back, it's all about avoiding these kinds of complications, whether you're dealing with a beachfront condo in Bang Tao, Phuket, or any other kind of property investment. Smooth sailing is what you want.
So the message here is really clear. Getting this right isn't just advisable, it's basically a financial necessity. Sounds like a massive headache you really, really want to avoid.
Precisely. Look, navigating Thailand's property tax system, it can honestly feel like trying to find your way through a maze sometimes, and it's pretty easy to take a wrong turn. That's exactly why getting professional help isn't just a luxury, it's often indispensable. Trying to figure out stamp duty, SBT, withholding tax, all the different rules and rates on your own, well, it can easily lead to mistakes. And those mistakes can be costly, both in terms of money and, frankly, your time and stress levels.
Yeah, I could see that. And that brings us to the professionals who can help, like tax advisors. They sound absolutely crucial here. They're the specialists for the financial side, aren't they? They know the Thai Revenue Department's processes inside out. They can help you calculate exactly what's due, when it's due, how to file correctly, basically take the stress out of it. Like, if you were buying that amazing place in Cape Yamu, Phuket, a good tax advisor could break down all the costs for you, not just the sale price, but everything else, ensuring no surprises. They're invaluable for getting those filings spot on.
Absolutely. And then beyond the pure numbers, you've got the legal side of things. That's where legal consultants come in. They specialize in Thai property law. They can help you understand those complex contracts, figure out the best ownership structures, identify potential legal risks, essentially protect your rights whether you're buying or selling.
Yeah.
It's always, always a smart move to have a legal expert review any agreement before you sign anything, especially with major investments. They can also help navigate the actual registration process at the land department, which itself can be, quite intricate.
So at the end of the day, investing a bit in professional advice seems like it buys a lot of peace of mind and helps ensure the whole process goes smoothly. It really just sounds like the smart play for anyone involved in Thai property, from just dreaming about that villa to actually holding the keys. Okay, so wrapping this up, the key takeaway for you, our listener, has to be this. Understanding Thailand's stamp duty, that 0.5% rate that applies when SBT doesn't, and all the other property taxes, like that smaller 0.1% on lease transfers, is just absolutely essential. Knowing who pays what and when and under which specific rules. Yeah, it might not be the most exciting part of buying property, but getting it wrong, that can lead to some really significant unexpected costs or penalties.
Definitely. And if you're ever feeling unsure about any of it, that quick conversation with a good local tax advisor can genuinely save you a ton of hassle and probably money down the road. It's all about being proactive and making sure you're fully informed.
Couldn't agree more. So as we finish this deep dive, here's a little something to chew on. What other hidden fees or taxes might be lurking out there, maybe in other complex transactions we just assume are straightforward? And how much value can you unlock just by taking the time to really understand the fine print? Maybe think about what other parts of your financial or legal life could benefit from a similar kind of deep dive into the specifics. You might actually be surprised by what you find.